Hashtag the abandoned dragon. Marcus Williams walked through the crowded pet adoption center, his 8-year-old daughter Emma tugging at his sleeve. The weekend rush filled the building with families searching for their perfect companion. Dogs barked from their kennels, cats purred in their cages, and exotic birds chirped melodically from their perches. "Dad, look at that puppy." Emma pointed toward a golden retriever puppy that wagged its tail frantically at every passing visitor. A small crowd had gathered around the kennel, with children pressing their faces against the glass. Marcus smiled, but continued walking. Something felt different today. He had promised Emma they could adopt a pet for her birthday, but none of the usual animals seemed right. They had visited 3 other shelters that morning, and nothing clicked. As they moved toward the back of the building, the crowds thinned out. The lighting became dimmer, and the atmosphere quieter. This section housed the animals that had been there the longest, the ones people passed by without a second glance. In the very last corner, almost hidden behind a support beam, sat a small glass enclosure. Unlike the other habitats buzzing with activity, this one seemed forgotten. Marcus almost walked past it too, but something made him stop. Inside the enclosure lay the most unusual creature he had ever seen. At first glance, it looked like a small lizard about the size of a house cat. Its scales shimmered with deep emerald and gold colors that caught what little light reached the corner. But there was something different about its proportions. Its head was slightly larger than a typical lizard, with intelligent amber eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. Small, barely visible wing buds protruded from its shoulders. "What is that, Dad?" Emma whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Marcus squinted at the small placard attached to the enclosure. The writing was faded and covered with dust, as if no one had read it in months. He wiped it clean with his sleeve. The placard read, "Dragon Draco Minor, age unknown, special needs, requires patient owner familiar with magical creature care. Warning, growth potential unknown, not suitable for novice pet owners." Marcus blinked hard and read it again. "Dragon?" He looked back at the creature, which had now lifted its head and was staring directly at him. Those amber eyes seemed to pierce right through him, and for a moment, Marcus felt a strange connection. "Dad, is that really a dragon?" Emma asked, her face pressed against the glass. Before Marcus could answer, a shelter volunteer approached them. She was an elderly woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her name tag read Dorothy. "I see you found our special resident," Dorothy said with a sad smile. "Poor little thing has been here for over 2 years. Nobody wants him." 2 years? Marcus asked, surprised. "Why so long?" Dorothy sighed and looked at the small dragon with genuine affection. "Well, most people come here looking for traditional pets. When they see the word dragon on his tag, they either think it a joke or they get scared. Those who do show interest usually change their minds when they learn about the special requirements." Emma had moved closer to the glass and was making soft cooing sounds. The dragon responded by moving toward her, placing one small clawed foot against the glass where her hand rested on the outside. What kind of special requirements? Marcus found himself asking, though he wasn't sure why. He had come here planning to adopt a dog or maybe a cat. Dragons, even dwarf dragons like this one, need specific care, Dorothy explained. They're incredibly intelligent, more intelligent than most people realize. They need mental stimulation, proper temperature regulation, and a special diet. This little guy eats a combination of fruits, vegetables, and small amounts of protein. He also needs space to eventually spread his wings when they fully develop. His wings will grow? Emma asked excitedly. Eventually, yes. But that's part of why families get nervous. Nobody knows exactly how big he'll get or what his full capabilities might be. The tag says growth potential unknown for a reason. He could stay this size forever, or he could grow to be much larger. Marcus watched as the dragon tilted its head, studying Emma with obvious curiosity. There was something almost human-like in its expressions. Has anyone ever tried to adopt him? Marcus asked. Dorothy's expression grew sadder. Oh yes, several times. But they always bring him back within a week or two. One family returned him after just 3 days. They said he was too smart, that it felt like having a person trapped in an animal's body. Another family brought him back because he wouldn't eat the cheap pet food they bought. They didn't want to spend money on his proper diet. That's terrible, Emma said, her eyes filling with tears. He must be so lonely. The dragon seemed to understand her emotion. It moved closer to the glass again and made a soft, musical sound, almost like a purr mixed with a gentle whistle. He is lonely, Dorothy confirmed. Dragons are social creatures. In the wild, they live in communities. This little one has been isolated here for so long. The staff tries to interact with him, but we're busy with so many other animals. Marcus felt his heart breaking as he looked at the abandoned creature. He had always been drawn to underdogs, things and people that others overlooked or discarded. It was what made him successful in his job as a social worker, but it also meant he often took on more than he should. Can we interact with him? Marcus asked. Maybe hold him? Dorothy's face brightened. Of course. Nobody's asked to hold him in months. Let me get him out. She opened the enclosure with a special key, then gently lifted the dragon. He didn't resist at all, settling comfortably in her arms like a cat might. Would you like to hold him, sweetheart? Dorothy asked Emma. Emma nodded eagerly. Dorothy carefully transferred the dragon to Emma's arms, showing her how to support his body properly. The dragon immediately relaxed against Emma, closing his eyes contentedly. Dad, he's warm, Emma said with wonder. And he's purring like a cat. Marcus reached out to stroke the dragon's head gently. The scales felt like smooth stones warmed by the sun. As soon as Marcus touched him, the dragon opened his amber eyes and looked directly at him. In that moment, Marcus felt something he couldn't explain, a sense of recognition, as if he and this creature were meant to find each other. What's his name? Emma asked. He doesn't have one, Dorothy said sadly. We've just been calling him Little Dragon or the Dragon in Corner 12. Nobody's ever bothered to name him properly. That's awful, Emma said. She looked down at the dragon in her arms. You need a real name, don't you? The dragon made that musical purring sound again, as if agreeing. Why don't you think about it while I tell your dad more about dragon care? Dorothy suggested. For the next 30 minutes, Dorothy explained everything she knew about caring for dwarf dragons. The diet requirements, the temperature needs, the importance of mental stimulation, and the potential challenges they might face. She was honest about the unknowns, how large he might grow, whether he would develop any magical abilities, and the fact that his lifespan was completely uncertain. I won't lie to you, Dorothy said as they watched Emma continue to bond with the dragon. Taking him home would be a big responsibility and a bit of a leap of faith. But I can see how much he likes your daughter and how much she likes him. In all my years working here, I've never seen him respond to anyone the way he's responding to her. Marcus looked at his daughter, who was now sitting cross-legged on the floor with the dragon curled up in her lap like a cat. She was telling him about her school, her friends, and her favorite books, and the dragon appeared to be listening intently to every word. Emma, Marcus said gently, you know this wouldn't be like having a regular pet, right? This little guy has special needs. I know, Dad, Emma said seriously. But look at him. Everyone has just walked past him for 2 whole years. How must that feel? We can't just leave him here to be ignored again. Marcus felt his resolve weakening. There was truth in his daughter's words. How could they walk away now, knowing this intelligent creature would return to his lonely corner, waiting for someone who might never come? What if he gets too big for our house? Marcus asked, more to himself than to anyone else. Then we'll figure it out, Emma said with the simple confidence that only children possess. We'll make sure he has what he needs. The dragon lifted his head from Emma's lap and looked at Marcus again. Those ancient-looking eyes seemed to be pleading, but also offering something in return, loyalty, companionship, and perhaps something more. Dorothy sensed Marcus wavering. Why don't you take some time to think about it? You don't have to decide right now. But as Marcus watched the connection between his daughter and the abandoned dragon, he realized his decision was already made. Some things in life required logical thinking and careful planning. Others required taking a leap of faith and trusting her heart. Actually, Marcus said, surprising himself with his words, I think we've thought about it enough. If you're willing to trust us with him, we'd like to take him home. Dorothy's face lit up with joy and relief. Really? Are you sure? We're sure, Emma said before Marcus could second-guess himself. Aren't we, Dad? Marcus nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. We're sure. But first, this little guy needs a proper name. Emma looked down at the dragon thoughtfully. What about Oliver? He looks like an Oliver to me. The dragon lifted his head and made that musical purring sound again, louder this time, as if expressing approval. I think he likes it, Marcus said, smiling. Dorothy clapped her hands together. Oliver it is. Oh, this is wonderful. I need to get the adoption papers and his care instructions. Plus, I'll give you my personal phone number in case you have any questions or concerns. As Dorothy hurried off to prepare the paperwork, Marcus sat down next to Emma and Oliver. The dragon immediately moved to perch on Marcus's knee, making himself comfortable. Are you sure about this, sweetheart? Marcus asked his daughter. Taking care of Oliver is going to be a big responsibility. I'm sure, Dad, Emma said firmly. Besides, you always tell me that the best things in life are the ones worth working for. Marcus smiled. His daughter was wise beyond her years. As he looked down at Oliver, who had closed his eyes and was basking in the warmth of human contact for the first time in months, Marcus felt they were about to embark on an adventure unlike anything they had ever experienced. Little did they know, their decision to read that dusty tag and look past Oliver's unusual nature would change their lives in ways they could never imagine. The small dragon they were taking home was far more than he appeared to be, and their simple act of kindness was about to unlock a story of magic, friendship, and wonder that had been waiting 2 years to unfold. Hashtag Oliver's new beginning the ride home was filled with excitement and nervous energy. Oliver sat calmly in a special carrier that Dorothy had provided, lined with soft blankets. Every few minutes, Emma would peek through the carrier's mesh window and whisper reassuring words to him. Almost home, Oliver. You're going to love your new room. Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror, still processing what they had just done. He had gone to the shelter planning to adopt a dog, and instead, he was bringing home a dragon. When he called his sister Lisa from the car to tell her the news, she thought he was joking. At what? Lisa had laughed. Marcus, please tell me you didn't actually adopt a lizard, and convince Emma it's a dragon. It really is a dragon, Lisa. The paperwork says so. I know it sounds crazy, but you'll understand when you meet him. When they pulled into their driveway, Marcus felt a moment of doubt. Their modest 2-story house, suddenly, seemed very ordinary for a creature as extraordinary as Oliver. But, as they carried him inside, Oliver's reaction put those fears to rest. The moment they released him from the carrier in their living room, Oliver began exploring with obvious delight. He moved gracefully around the space, his amber eyes taking in every detail. He sniffed the furniture, examined the plants by the windows, and even seemed to appreciate the family photos on the mantel. Look how curious he is, Emma exclaimed, following Oliver around the room. He's like a tiny explorer. Oliver paused in front of the fireplace, tilting his head as he studied the cold ashes. Then he made a soft chirping sound and moved on to investigate the bookshelf. He seemed particularly drawn to Emma's collection of fairy tale books. He likes stories, Emma announced, as if she could read his mind. Don't you, Oliver? The dragon looked up at her and made that musical purring sound, which had quickly become their favorite sound in the world. Setting up Oliver's space took most of the afternoon. Dorothy had provided detailed instructions, along with special lamps for warmth and UV light. They converted Emma's old playroom into Oliver's main habitat, complete with climbing branches, hiding spots, and a small pool for bathing. But the most interesting part was watching Oliver's intelligence in action. When Marcus was setting up the temperature controls, Oliver sat nearby, watching intently. When Marcus struggled to understand the digital thermostat, Oliver actually nudged his hand toward the correct button. When Emma was arranging his food and water dishes, Oliver gently moved them to a different location, one that was closer to his basking spot. It's like he knows exactly what he needs, Marcus said to Emma as they watched Oliver settle into his new space. Of course he does, Emma replied matter-of-factly. He's super smart. Dorothy said dragons are more intelligent than people think. That first evening, as Emma did her homework at the kitchen table, Oliver positioned himself nearby, seemingly content to just be part of the family routine. Marcus prepared Oliver's dinner according to Dorothy's detailed instructions, a mix of fresh fruits, vegetables, and small pieces of cooked chicken. Oliver ate with obvious enjoyment, making soft, appreciative sounds. The real surprise came at bedtime. Emma had assumed Oliver would sleep in his new habitat, but when she went to say goodnight to him, he followed her upstairs to her bedroom. He explored her room just as thoroughly as he had explored the living room, showing particular interest in her stuffed animals and books. "Dad, can Oliver sleep in my room?" Emma asked when Marcus came to tuck her in. Marcus hesitated. Dorothy hadn't mentioned anything about sleeping arrangements, and he wasn't sure if it was safe or appropriate for Oliver to sleep in Emma's bed. But Oliver seemed to make the decision for them. He climbed onto Emma's bed, circled 3 times like a cat, and curled up on the extra pillow, closing his eyes peacefully. "I guess that settles that," Marcus said with a smile. That first night, Marcus barely slept. Every sound from Emma's room made him worry. Was Oliver too warm? Too cold? Was he trying to escape? Was he making Emma uncomfortable? But when Marcus quietly checked on them around midnight, he found them both sleeping peacefully. Oliver had moved closer to Emma and was curled up against her side like a loyal pet. The next morning brought new discoveries. Oliver woke before Emma and spent several minutes gently nuzzling her face until she woke up, giggling. "That's the best alarm clock ever," Emma declared. At breakfast, Oliver positioned himself between Emma and Marcus, as if claiming his place in the family hierarchy. Marcus offered him a small piece of apple from his plate, and Oliver accepted it gracefully, eating it with what could only be described as good manners. "You know what, Oliver?" Emma said as she got ready for school. "I think you're going to fit in perfectly here." Marcus had taken a few days off work to help Oliver adjust, and those first few days revealed just how special their new family member truly was. Oliver's intelligence became more apparent each day. He learned the layout of the house within hours and seemed to understand their daily routines almost immediately. When Marcus worked in his home office, Oliver would curl up on a sunny spot on the carpet nearby. He never interrupted or demanded attention, but his presence was comforting. When Emma came home from school, Oliver would greet her at the door like an excited dog, making happy chirping sounds and doing little circles around her feet. But it was the small moments that really touched Marcus's heart. Like when Oliver noticed that Marcus always struggled to reach the top shelf in the kitchen. One morning, Marcus found Oliver had somehow managed to knock down the coffee filters Marcus needed, positioning them perfectly on the counter. Or when Emma was feeling sick with a cold, and Oliver spent the entire day curled up next to her, his warm body providing natural heat therapy. The neighborhood reaction to Oliver was mixed. Some neighbors were fascinated and would ask to see him during their evening walks. Children would gather around when Emma brought Oliver outside in his special harness, their eyes wide with wonder. But others were less accepting. Mrs. Henderson from next door complained to Marcus about the dangerous wild animal in his backyard. The mailman initially refused to deliver mail when he saw Oliver sunbathing near the front steps, despite Oliver's obvious disinterest in anyone except his family. "People are just scared of what they don't understand," Marcus explained to Emma after a particularly unpleasant encounter with a neighbor. "Oliver isn't dangerous. He's just different. That's their loss," Emma said with the wisdom of someone far older than 8. "They're missing out on knowing the most amazing creature in the world." The biggest challenge came during Oliver's first veterinary visit. Marcus had called several vets in the area, and most either hung up when he mentioned the word dragon or told him they only treated normal pets. Finally, he found Dr. Sarah Chun, an exotic animal veterinarian who was willing to see Oliver. Dr. Chun was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. When Marcus and Emma brought Oliver in for his first checkup, she examined him with genuine interest rather than fear or skepticism. "He's remarkable," Dr. Chun said as she carefully listened to Oliver's heartbeat with a specialized stethoscope. "His bone structure is unique, and his muscle development suggests he's built for flight, even though his wings haven't fully developed yet." "Will they develop?" Emma asked eagerly. "Based on what I can see, yes, eventually. But it might take years, and we won't know how large they'll become until it happens. Dragons mature very slowly compared to other animals." Dr. Chun ran several tests and declared Oliver perfectly healthy. She provided Marcus with additional care instructions and warned him that Oliver's needs might change as he grew and developed. "The most important thing," Dr. Chun said as they prepare to leave, "is to treat him like the intelligent being he is. Dragons form deep, emotional bonds with their families. Oliver will be loyal to you for life, but he'll also grieve deeply if he feels abandoned or unwanted." That evening, as Marcus watched Oliver and Emma reading together on the couch, Emma reading aloud while Oliver listened intently, he realized that adopting Oliver hadn't just given them a pet. It had given them a family member. But Marcus also sensed that their journey was just beginning. There was something in Oliver's ancient-looking eyes that suggested depths they hadn't yet discovered. Sometimes, Marcus would catch Oliver staring out the window with an expression that seemed almost nostalgic, as if he was remembering something important that he had lost. During their second week together, Marcus noticed Oliver responding to things that shouldn't have meant anything to a creature raised in a shelter. When Emma played classical music for her piano practice, Oliver would position himself near the piano and close his eyes, swaying slightly to the rhythm. When Marcus lit candles during a power outage, Oliver became visibly excited, making happy chirping sounds and moving closer to the flames. But the most intriguing behavior happened during thunderstorms. Instead of hiding like most pets, Oliver would go to the largest window in the house and watch the lightning with intense concentration. During one particularly dramatic storm, Marcus swore he saw Oliver's eyes flash with the same electric blue as the lightning bolts. "Dad, do you think Oliver remembers being wild?" Emma asked one evening as they watched Oliver stare at the setting sun from their back porch. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe. Dragons live a long time. He might remember things from before he came to the shelter. I wish he could tell us his story," Emma said softly. Marcus nodded, watching Oliver bask in the last rays of sunlight. Those amber eyes held so many secrets, so many untold stories. Sometimes Marcus felt like they were caring for a wise old soul trapped in a small, young body. As their third week with Oliver began, Marcus realized that their quiet family life was about to become much more interesting. Oliver was growing more confident each day, and with that confidence came hints of abilities that neither Marcus nor Emma had expected. It started with small things. Oliver began opening doors by manipulating the handles with his claws. He figured out how to turn the television on and off, and seemed to have definite preferences for certain channels. When Emma's goldfish got sick, Oliver sat by the fish tank for hours, making soft, rhythmic sounds that seemed to help the fish recover. But the real revelation came on a Saturday morning when Marcus was struggling to start his old lawnmower. He had been pulling the starter cord for 10 minutes with no success, growing more frustrated by the minute. Oliver watched from nearby, then approached the mower and placed one small clawed foot on the engine. The mower started immediately. Marcus stared in shock. It could have been a coincidence, but something in Oliver's satisfied expression suggested otherwise. "Oliver," Marcus said slowly, "did you just fix my lawnmower?" Oliver tilted his head and made an innocent chirping sound, but Marcus caught a glint of mischief in those amber eyes. That evening, Marcus called Dorothy to ask if she had noticed anything unusual about Oliver during his time at the shelter. "Unusual how?" Dorothy asked. "Well, he seems to have an effect on mechanical things, and he's incredibly intuitive about what people need. Dorothy was quiet for a moment. Now that you mention it, we did notice some odd things. Electronic equipment worked better when Oliver was nearby. The heating system in his section of the building never broke down, even though it was the oldest part. And Oliver always seemed to know when other animals were sick or stressed, even animals in completely different parts of the shelter. Did anyone ever investigate why? Marcus asked. We talked about it, but honestly, we were just grateful that he wasn't causing problems. Some dragons can be quite destructive when they're unhappy. Oliver was always calm and well-behaved. Maybe too well-behaved, looking back on it. After hanging up, Marcus sat in his kitchen, trying to process what he was learning about Oliver. Whatever kind of dragon Oliver was, he was clearly no ordinary pet. Marcus was beginning to suspect that the tag's warning about unknown growth potential meant more than just physical size. As he watched Oliver help Emma with her math homework, somehow managing to guide her to the correct answers without being able to speak, Marcus realized they were in for an adventure much bigger than he had ever imagined. Hashtag the truth about Oliver 1 month after bringing Oliver home. Marcus's life had settled into a comfortable routine. Oliver had become such a natural part of their family that Marcus sometimes forgot how unusual their situation was. That changed on a Tuesday evening when everything they thought they knew about Oliver was turned upside down. Emma was in her room, finishing her homework, when she called downstairs in an excited voice. Dad, you need to come see this right now. Marcus rushed upstairs, worried something was wrong. Instead, he found Emma sitting on her bed, staring at Oliver with amazement. Oliver was perched on her desk, and hovering 6 inches above his small clawed feet was Emma's pencil, spinning slowly in the air. Oliver's making my pencil float, Emma whispered, as if speaking too loudly might break the spell. Marcus rubbed his eyes and looked again. The pencil was definitely floating, surrounded by a faint golden glow that seemed to emanate from Oliver's body. As they watched, Oliver gently guided the pencil down to the desk and looked up at them with an expression that seemed almost apologetic. How long has he been doing that? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Just now. I dropped my pencil, and instead of picking it up, Oliver just stared at it really hard. Then it started floating. Marcus sat down heavily on Emma's bed, his mind racing. Magic. Real, actual magic. He had read the word magical on Oliver's tag at the shelter, but he had assumed it was just a fanciful way to describe his unusual species. He never thought it meant actual supernatural abilities. Oliver, Marcus said carefully, can you understand what we're saying? Oliver tilted his head and made his familiar purring sound. Then, slowly and deliberately, he nodded. Emma gasped. He really does understand. Oliver, you've been understanding us this whole time, haven't you? Another nod. Why didn't you show us this before? Marcus asked. Oliver made a series of soft sounds, almost like he was trying to speak. His expression looked frustrated, as if he had so much to say, but couldn't find the words. He can't talk, Emma said with sudden understanding. But he wants to. Don't you, Oliver? Oliver nodded again, more emphatically this time. Over the next few days, Marcus and Emma discovered the extent of Oliver's abilities. He could move small objects with his mind, sense when electrical devices were about to break down, and even influence the weather in tiny ways. When Emma was sad about a canceled school picnic due to rain, Oliver spent an hour concentrating intensely, and the clouds actually parted enough for the event to continue. But more importantly, they learned to communicate with Oliver in new ways. Emma developed a system of yes and no questions that allowed Oliver to share basic information about himself. They learned that he had been lonely at the shelter, not just because he was isolated, but because he could sense the emotions of all the abandoned animals around him and felt their pain as his own. They also learned that Oliver's intelligence was far beyond what they had realized. He understood complex concepts, could do basic mathematics, and even had preferences for certain types of music and art. When Emma brought home a book about ancient civilizations, Oliver became visibly excited, pointing at pictures of old temples and castles with obvious recognition. Do you remember places like these? Emma asked, showing him a picture of an ancient stone castle. Oliver nodded vigorously, his eyes growing distant and sad. Were you there? Marcus asked gently. Another nod, followed by a soft, mournful sound. It was Dr. Chun who helped them understand what they were dealing with. When Marcus called to describe Oliver's new behaviors, she asked them to bring him in immediately. I've been researching dragons since Oliver's first visit, Dr. Chun explained as she examined him. What you're describing sounds like a dragon who is coming into his magical maturity. It usually happens when they feel truly safe and loved for the first time. Magical maturity? Marcus asked. Dragons are born with magical potential, but it only manifests when they form strong emotional bonds. Oliver has been suppressing his abilities, probably unconsciously, until he felt secure enough to let his guard down. Dr. Chun ran her hands along Oliver's wing buds, which had grown noticeably larger over the past week. Based on his development and the strength of his magical abilities, I believe Oliver is what's known as a true dragon, not just a dwarf dragon. True dragons can live for thousands of years and possess incredible magical power, but they only reach their full potential when they have a purpose and a family they love. Thousands of years? Emma asked with wide eyes. Yes, which means Oliver is probably much older than he appears. True dragons can control their aging process. He might have been living as a small, apparently young dragon for decades, or even centuries. That evening, Marcus sat with Emma and Oliver on the back porch, watching the sunset and trying to process everything they had learned. Oliver, Marcus said carefully, how old are you really? Oliver held up one clawed foot, then looked frustrated. He moved to a patch of dirt and began scratching marks with his claw. When he was finished, Marcus counted the marks. 347. You're 347 years old? Emma asked in amazement. Oliver nodded, then looked sad again. Where did you come from? Marcus asked. Oliver pointed to the mountains visible in the distance, then made a gesture that seemed to indicate something was lost or destroyed. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Your home was destroyed, wasn't it? That's why you were all alone. Oliver made that mournful sound again and moved closer to Emma, seeking comfort. What happened to your family? Marcus asked gently. Oliver's response broke their hearts. He scratched more marks in the dirt, showing them a large number, then slowly erased most of them until only one remained. Him. You're the last one, Emma whispered, understanding. You're the last dragon. Oliver nodded, a single tear sliding down his scaled face. Marcus felt a deep sadness wash over him as he understood the magnitude of what they were dealing with. Oliver wasn't just a unique pet. He was a survivor, the last of his kind, carrying the weight of an entire species' extinction. No wonder he had seemed so old and wise despite his small size. No wonder he had been content to live quietly in the shelter, suppressing his true nature. He had been grieving for centuries. Is that why you stayed small? Emma asked with intuition beyond her years. Because you were too sad to grow? Oliver nodded again, then looked at both Marcus and Emma with an expression of profound gratitude. He moved to Emma's hand and nuzzled it gently, then did the same with Marcus. But you're not sad anymore, are you? Emma said, smiling through her tears. Because now you have us. Oliver's response was immediate and magical. His scales began to glow with that golden light they had seen before, but brighter and warmer. The light spread outward, touching Marcus and Emma with a feeling of pure love and contentment. In that moment, Marcus understood that they hadn't just adopted Oliver. They had given him a reason to live again. Over the following weeks, Oliver began to change more dramatically. His wing buds grew larger, developing into proper wings that could lift him short distances. His scales became more vibrant, and his size increased gradually but noticeably. He was still small by dragon standards, but he was no longer the tiny, sad creature they had found in the corner of the shelter. More importantly, Oliver began to use his magic openly. He helped Marcus with household repairs, using his abilities to fix things that should have required professional service calls. He assisted Emma with school projects in ways that amazed her teachers. When their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, fell and broke her hip, Oliver somehow sensed her distress from across the street and guided Marcus to check on her, potentially saving her life. The neighborhood's attitude toward Oliver began to change as well. Word spread about his helpful nature and gentle temperament. Children who had once been afraid began asking their parents if they could visit Oliver. Even Mrs. Henderson, who had initially complained about having a dangerous wild animal next door, eventually admitted that Oliver was probably the best neighbor she had ever had. But the biggest change was in Oliver himself. The sadness that had always lurked in his ancient eyes was replaced by joy and purpose. He had found his new family, and they had given him a reason to embrace his true nature once again. One evening, 6 months after bringing Oliver home, Marcus found himself standing in the backyard watching Oliver and Emma play together. Oliver could now fly short distances, and he delighted in giving Emma rides around the yard. Their laughter filled the air, and Marcus marveled at how different their lives had become. Dr. Chen had warned him that Oliver would continue to grow and develop his abilities. Eventually, he might become too large for their house. His magic might become too powerful for a suburban neighborhood. But Marcus wasn't worried about the future. They would figure out together, just as they had figured out everything else. "Dad, come fly with us," Emma called from across the yard, where Oliver was preparing for another short flight. Marcus smiled and walked toward his extraordinary family. As Oliver gently lifted Emma into the air, his golden scales shimmering in the setting sun, Marcus thought about how many people had walked past that dusty corner in the shelter. How many had seen the word dragon on Oliver's tag and decided he was too different, too risky, too unknown. They had all missed the chance to discover what Marcus and Emma now knew. Sometimes the most wonderful gifts come in unexpected packages. Sometimes the creatures that everyone else overlooks are the ones with the most love to give. And sometimes taking a chance on something different leads to magic beyond your wildest dreams. Oliver landed gently and looked back at Marcus with those wise amber eyes. In them, Marcus no longer saw sadness or loneliness. Instead, he saw gratitude, love, and the promise of many more magical adventures to come. As they walked back toward the house together, Marcus realized that reading that faded tag in the shelter had done more than just save Oliver's life. It had enriched their own lives in ways they could never have imagined. They had given a lonely dragon a family, and in return, he had given them the most extraordinary friendship any of them would ever know. The small dragon that everyone had turned away from had turned out to be the greatest treasure they could have found, and their story together was just beginning.